Well, Retribution was a lot less cringe than Holy was. Since I'm doing a second iteration, obviously it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot less cringe than Holy. I'd figured that I did okay with Retribution, not so great with Protection, and I was basically right about that. I'd incorrectly thought I did awesome with Holy, and I paid for that. But those guys in the Retribution Discord, I could talk with them all night if I didn't need to get up early in the morning for work. Thank you guys very much for your help and your feedback and for helping me sift through the good, the bad, the cringe, and the meh. Surprisingly enough, some of the more visually impressive upgrades I'd cooked up fell into the meh category. Stuff like Sanctification and Fist of the Heavens are pretty spectacular visually, but in terms of their mechanics, they're just additional damage, boring but practical. Same for Exorcism. It's got good nostalgia value and class flavor, but realistically, it's just a damage buff. None of those things really change how Retribution plays. I mean, with elemental combat, I did change the way it plays. Lava Shock absorbs Flame Shock's damage over time effect and lets you snowball the damage. And it's kind of weird to talk about a lava spell snowballing when you think about it, but it does change the feel of the spec. I have nothing yet like that for Retribution, so it's time to add something. They told me I screwed up with my original implementation of Heaven's Fury, so I'm changing it. Heaven's Fury is now a single target, higher damage spell that still provides 5 holy power, and as you spend holy power, its cooldown is reduced. Natural Light was another goof up on my part. The actual Retribution players pointed out that it would just get used before a fight to generate holy power and get it maxed out right before the pull, which doesn't work for me as a Holy Paladin. I can cast Holy Light on the beaconed tank before a pull to try to get my holy power maxed out, but my experience is that as soon as combat starts, my holy power zeroes out. Then again, that just drives home the point that Natural Light is useless for Retribution and should be switched out for something else. Now, they liked Speed of Light as an upgrade for Divine Steed, but even better than that is something they reminded me of. Turalian's Might, a Legion talent that was there for a little while during Legion's beta, but then Blizzard looked at it and apparently said, nope, too good for them, too much fun, can't allow fun in our games. But fun is more than welcome in these upgrade spreads, and that is what they wanted me to put in there on the Retribution Discord, so here it is. Natural Light is gone, and in its place is Turalian's Might, which lets you hurl a magic sword at the target location and then teleport there, doing AoE damage when you throw the sword and AoE damage when you jump. And you get this at the cost of your sprint. Also, I'm changing up Sanctification a little. Instead of planting a kind of a beacon on the ground that throws out holy bolts, instead the Sanctification ability buffs you to throw out holy bolts. Periodically, volleys of holy bolts are launched out from you. These bolts prefer hitting targets that haven't recently been hit with a bolt, and also prefer your primary target if you have one. Other extra effects that depend on enemies or allies standing in the area of effective consecration instead kick in if you are within 12 yards of the target, and these effects last as long as the Sanctification buff lasts. An alternate implementation of Sanctification that I'm keeping in my back pocket is that when you have the Sanctification buff on you, and you cast Crusader Strike, Judgment, Divine Storm, Templar's Verdict, Hammer of Wrath, Blade of Justice, or upgrades or talented replacements for any of the above, 2 volleys of Holy Bolts fly out. One flies out immediately, another one flies out a second after the first one does. This changes the feel of the spec in that it adds to what your abilities do in general, but I worry that it's a bit too much flash. I mean, the Sanctification ability that Herja uses is very flashy, and rightly so, since players need to see the holy bolts so they can dodge them. But if that much flash is given to a player ability with 100% uptime, and you know it needs 100% uptime for protection to work, then it'll just be too much. But I figured I should at least mention this alternate idea for how to implement Sanctification so I could get some reactions to it. Besides that, there was a bit of house cleaning that I needed to do with Exorcism. having it do more damage to certain enemy types is not so great. So instead, it's going to stun demon and undead enemies for 3 seconds if they're not elites. There's a little anti-undead flavor in there, but it doesn't change the effectiveness of your damage based on enemy type. Same story with Mass Exorcism, except that's a 1.5 second stun since that's AoE. And the real thing that they told me was a problem for Retribution was the lack of a defensive cooldown, and I was surprised at that myself. Shield of Vengeance, Hammer of Justice, Divine Shield, Blessing of Protection, Cleanse Toxins, Lay on Hands, Eye for an Eye, and of course Flash of Light. You'd think all of that would be enough. I mean, I sure did going into the discussion, and probably the devs thought it too. But compared to other classes, it's not really enough. Divine Shield is usually used to cheese one particular mechanic and therefore can't be used for damage reduction. Blessing of Protection is immunity, not damage reduction. Eye for an Eye is a talent, and even besides that, it's physical only. And there's plenty of non-physical damage in a raid. The list goes on from there. So here's what I proposed in response to these epiphanies, and they loved it on the Discord. The Divine Protection spell, which is a 2-minute cooldown that reduces damage taken by 20% for 8 seconds, is back. It's just back. It and Shield of Vengeance are just completely independent of each other. Both of them are on your spell bar. So those are the changes. Apart from that, Fist of the Heavens is single target. I got good feedback on Objection since having a ranged interrupt is a big quality of life improvement, but, well, I've given this speech before, I might as well give it again. I'm not really sure that the upgrade system is the best way to deliver quality of life improvements to the players of a spec. I mean, yes, when a player power system like my upgrade system delivers a quality of life improvement to a player, that system looks appealing to the player, but that feels like a cheap way to make a system look good. Wouldn't a better way be to add quality of life by making changes at the baseline, so that you don't need to spend a talent point or a glyph slot or an upgrade slot or anything like that to get the quality of life? I mean, that's why I unpruned Denounce as its own baseline ability instead of making it an upgrade for, say, Judgment for Holy Paladins. And I can't help but feel like making Objection something you need to spend an upgrade slot to get is just a cheap way to make the upgrade system look more appealing. And if I get feedback telling me to make it baseline in Iteration 3, I will. Possibly getting Kaliga or something else into the upgrade spread in its place to add a silence to the interrupt. Now, I had thought about adding Speed of Light in Objection's place, but that's upgrading Divine Steed 2 different mutually exclusive ways. That would feel a little awkward for the first expansion where the upgrade system gets introduced. Of course, if Blizzard actually used this upgrade system with the idea in mind that they'd continuously expand on this system and add a few upgrades every expansion, then there would be a point where it wouldn't be awkward to have 2 mutually exclusive upgrades for the same ability. When you have well over a dozen upgrades to choose from, it would be fine to have Turalian's Might and Speed of Light both upgrading Divine Steed. But in the first expansion, 2 utility upgrades that are mutually exclusive like that would just be awkward. Well, actually, besides that, I really owe the Retribution players in the Discord a lot of thanks. There were 2 absolutely terrible ideas that they saved me from putting into the spread that weren't even in the Iteration 1 back pocket. And for a while, I'd actually thought these ideas were good, but really they just wouldn't have worked. And bless their hearts, those Retribution players explained why to me. I might as well brain dump them here, just to add a little trivia, a little more design context for anyone who cares. The first idea that wouldn't have worked was making either Eternal Flame or Eternal Upgrade, I keep switching those names around, but making one of those an upgrade for Word of Glory. I'd thought, well, it's instant, so yeah, that might appeal to Holy, but not to Retribution. Retribution's job is doing damage, and spending Holy Power on something that isn't damage is not good. It's just not good. So that's why Natural Light got kicked out and replaced with a mobility utility upgrade instead of a healing utility upgrade. The second idea they shot down, that deserved it, really, was Seal of Command as an upgrade for Crusader Strike. Basically, the idea was that our auto attacks have a random chance to deal extra damage and give us holy power. Seal of Command was meant to be to Paladins what Demon Blades is to Demon Hunters. But Retribution is a two-handed DPS spec and Demon Hunters dual wield. We attack way slower than Demon Hunters, so Seal of Command, it just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't. I talked about these ideas to them, and they gave me the lowdown so I'd know not to put them into Iteration 2, and why. Kudos to them for their aid in my hour of need. So that's about it for Iteration 2. Again, I owe the community at the Retribution Discord a lot of thanks for their help. You treated me way better than the Holy Chat did, though admittedly I botched it with Holy on my first attempt. They even went above and beyond and gave me feedback on my Iteration 1 for Protection. I figured I made more mistakes for Protection than I did for Retribution, and I was correct about that for a change, but all of that is another video. Please do let me know in the comments what you think of this Iteration 2.